welcome to Raptors Weekly for the week of September the 14th. About 15 days left till October, and then we got Media Day and whatnot. So, Andrew, it's not too far away.
No, it's only 2 weeks away until we have still only speculation to talk about for a month. But at least speculation with, quotes.
We can talk about Media Day at that time, who has the best picture. I love those pictures they take on a Media Day because you get stuck with those for the rest of the season. There's no option to change it. If you screw that up, that's it. That's your picture for the remainder of the season.
It's the first day of first NFL Sunday today, and there was whenever they show the pictures for the starting lineups and everything, they had one pop up for someone. I think it was a kicker or something like that, and the guy, he had his eyes closed during the picture, like the flash got to him. And they put it up there, and it's like a live face of just him with his eyes shut, looking like a moron.
The NBA hasn't done the whole live video for the starting lineups yet, have they? Because in soccer and NFL, when you introduce like a lineman or something, you show him looking up with his arms crossed or whatever. It looks really weird. Yeah. But the NBA still is with the still images.
Looks up like Howard.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. But the NBA hasn't done that yet. They're still sticking with the they kind of leave it up to the broadcasting crew of each city to kind of do their own starting lineups. But I think it's time to standardize that. I think we all should have the stare into the camera, cross your arms, look up like you're about to kill someone look.
Yeah, and then tell us what school you went to, because apparently that's the arbitrary bit of information that we're all most curious about.
Yeah, no. So a bit of a reaction to our last podcast. Remember we ran down the the Raptors' top moments or most memorable moments, and the one moment that people have kind of criticized us for skipping over is the Darrick Martin 3. In the comment section, also on Twitter, a few people mentioned that was one that we just did not mention, and how wrong we were of not mentioning that historic moment, which kept the streak alive. The Darrick Martin 3?
Darrick Martin.
Huh. You don't remember this one?
Nope.
Okay, it was the Raptors streak, which was about to come to an end in Dallas, the 3-point streak. And I think it was about to end, and we were getting blown out, down by 35 or something. And Darrick Martin, with the last shot of the game, just hit a casual shot, a 30 for 3, and it went in, and that kept the streak alive for another 2.5 years or something.
That sounds pretty dumb.
You don't recall this at all?
No, it sounds like the least important thing I've ever heard of.
Okay, you do remember the streak, though.
Not on board. No, I don't even know the streak. How did I don't know. I feel on the outs about this. What's the streak?
You're totally out of the loop, man.
Yeah.
The Raptors 3-point streak, they held the NBA record for most consecutive games while hitting at least 1 3.
Okay.
This doesn't ring a bell at all?
No, it just doesn't. I don't know. I don't know what
happened. Wow,
man.
I
erased it because it never mattered to me.
You know why? You know why this is? It's because you always watch the game with the volume off.
That's true. I do that.
That's the problem here.
That's very true.
So you're totally out of the loop on this one.
Yeah.
So there you go, listener. That's why we kind of skipped over that moment, because Andrew didn't remember it. And I certainly, it occurred to me that was something, but it just came at the end of a 30-point game, and nobody really gave a shit at the time, and the Raptors sucked, and it just didn't matter. Yeah. All right. So let's talk some JV, man. I know he's playing in FIBA. I've only caught the highlights, and I've read the reports from ballineurope.net, which is a great website, by the way. Give him a follow on Twitter, Ball in Europe. I think we did a podcast with the editor there for a while, and great site. Check it out. So he's been writing about Jonas Valanciunas and how he's doing. He had a few strong showings. His most notable one is probably against Belgium, where he had 25 points and 12 rebounds. He was just dominating some dudes inside. But unfortunately, Andrew, he gave up the game-winning shot or game-winning tip-in because he wasn't fast enough to get back on defense on the break. What did you make of that?
I've seen Jonas Valanciunas attempt a sprint before. I get it. He's a bit of a lumberer. It happens. He's not meant to be a quick guy.
Is that it?
I'm not upset.
I was like.
I'm also not Lithuanian, so I mean that's playing a key role there.
Well, whatever. He had 25 points, 12 rebounds against Belgium, and I looked at the Belgium centers. They're no match. They wouldn't get into the D League here. So I take that with a grain of salt. But he did look good. He looked physically fit, as he always does in FIBA. He always looks. He's got a bit of an edge to him. He looks leaner. He just looks more into the game when he's playing in Europe. And I just hope that translates into the NBA. What do the Raptors have to do to take that form he's in currently and kind of carry that over into training camp into the regular season?
I think they need to talk him up, like in team circles. I think they need to not breed this sort of atmosphere where he's going to get 1 or 2 looks early, and if he doesn't do something great, or if he bumbles it, or if he's not quick, or if he doesn't look for the outlet, then that's it. He's cut off. Like he needs to. He can't. They can't foster a scenario where he's encouraged to act like a misbehaving child who is worried about the fact that someone's disappointed in him and now he doesn't get to play anymore. Like he needs to be clear that, look, we're going to feed you. We're going to make you a key part of this offense. We're going to you because if we're going to matter down the stretch, we need to be able to go to you as a post presence and a post scorer. So we need to have that as something that our entire offense is ready to do, because it's not just about him getting set and getting the opportunity, but we need the whole team to be able to get you the ball and get entry passes in late if that's something we're going to go to. And that needs to be a steady diet, and you need to be not concerned about whether or not any small mistake you make results in a feast or famine for you. Like you need to be accepted, you need to be a part of this, and we're going to go to you so you can be comfortable and focus on what you're doing, not worried about the possible consequences of what you're going to do. Because, I mean, he overthinks things. He chronically overthinks things. It slows him down, and it's an issue.
Like the parallel I'll make here is DeMar DeRozan. Like he thrived, he became an all-star when the team finally gave him that freedom, when the freedom to make mistakes. And talk about overthinking. DeMar DeRozan actually used to overthink a lot. He still does to some degree, but 2 years ago he was very indecisive with the ball on knowing what to do with it. But once you kind of gave him this guaranteed minutes that you're going to play 35 minutes a game no matter how bad you screw up, that's when he elevated his game and he became a better scorer. I think the same philosophy maybe needs to be applied to Jonas Valanciunas to get him to that next level. Just play without fear, play without worry, know that you're going to get minutes. And maybe now that he's got that big deal, maybe that perception changes and the attitude towards him changes. Now it's a long-term investment, and it doesn't make sense to have your long-term investment being benched for 15 minutes a game just because of a silly mistake. So maybe that has changed the dynamics a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, like, it's not just like there were national writers and big time U.S. writers who were writing about this last year, like Howard Beck and especially Zach Lowe were writing about how like hey, Toronto needs to use Valanciunas. Like, why are they not trying to develop something here? Like, look at the stats. He's he can hit free throws. He's great in the post, and you need to develop that. You need to have that as something you're ready to go to instead of just I don't know what like a gimmick.
Yeah, so JV in Europe always looking good. So let's hope he carries it over. Yeah, that game winner he gave up, it kind of sucked, but that's not his specialty. The other guy just got up twice, and this guy was a bit behind the play, and you can't really fault him for it, man. You can't expect your center to at the end of the game make like a 90-foot run and defend the break. So yeah, tough luck. The other piece of news for the week was the Raptors 905 regular season schedule being released. Andrew, excited about this one at all?
Print it out, put it on my fridge. It's big news. Big news, Zara. Sure. I mean, I think we're both all sarcasm aside, I think we are both excited about the D-League team. I think we're both probably planning on watching or going to games or something, like being a part of it and trying to take that in. But does schedule announcing do a lot for you?
Well, I'll tell you that the opening game is against the Mad Ants. And there are new rivals because they're the ones that stifled Bruno for playing time.
I like it. Bruno revenge game soon.
Bruno versus the Mad Ants. Bruno goes back to Fort Wayne, wherever the hell they're. Where are they? Fort Wayne, maybe? Yeah.
Is it an away game? Do they have to go to Fort Wayne? That's too bad.
Yeah. I wonder what they're going to use to get around. Is it a bus or is it a plane? Commercial? Probably commercial, right? I mean,
commercial, like coach flights, yeah.
Yeah, probably. So you're going to see a lot of Raptor D-League players at Pearson.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, some of these games are like Iowa. They're going to the West Coast for some of them. They can't just bus to everything.
Nah.
I don't know how often the D-League games are. I should probably know that, but.
Yeah. Or maybe they could borrow the Raptors charter. If it's a home game type deal. If they're at home and they're away.
Hey guys, are you using the plane this weekend? Could we? You think? I mean, we got to go to Portland. It's far away. Okay, thanks, guys.
As long as you bring it filled back with gas.
Yeah, exactly.
Jet fuel's expensive. All right, man. So for this podcast, we looked at Twitter and asked the question what the people want to talk about, and the people have spoken. They gave us a bunch of topics to to kind of talk about. And so we're gonna pick as many as we can. We can't pick them all because we do want to keep this relatively at a reasonable length. But the first one is from the real _ Ikatar, and he asked, Andrew, are you ready for this one?
Yeah.
Can we run a simple motion offense? Has JV peaked, or do we need to use him better? I think the two are related. I think he's alluding to last year's offense, which was quite static. And if you had to classify it as an offense between the two, the motion offense and the continuity offense, it was definitely on the continuity side. But can the Raptors, do they have the personnel to run a motion offense? So, well, why don't you explain to the listener, Andrew, what you think a motion offense means before we answer the question?
Sure. I mean, I think that basically what you're looking at is you're looking at an offense designed where you have shots that are coming as the result of specific plays. Like the Raptors ran a lot of sets last year where the idea was we're going to, we're going to have this action that then leads into the subsequent action, which will get a shot for DeMar from this spot on the floor, or we'll get a shot for Kyle here, or we'll open up a driving lane here for the person with the ball, or we'll free up JV for a shot or something. Like there was always a lot of what they ran had desired end goals, and the desired end goal was a specific shot for a specific person from a specific spot on the floor, and that worked really, really well for a while, and then slowed down. It never became awful until the playoffs when it was terrible, but and I think the idea with more of a motion offense is you have a set of principles that you run your offense by, and you have basic plays, and you have a large set of actions. And while sometimes you run plays for specific shots, generally speaking, what you're trying to do is run a set of actions to try to free someone up for an open shot. And you take a shot when you get an open shot. You don't take a shot because, you've given DeMar the ball here, and now he's going to try to get to within 14 feet where he likes the ball and shoot it. The idea is open shots for whoever the ball the ball will find the open hand out of the result of the actions you're running.
And I guess the most extreme example of a motion offense might be the triangle, right? Phil Jackson's triangle is one that, I mean, Jordan always got the shot, but from a, technically speaking or theoretically, it was an offense which always reacted to what the defense was doing, and as long as you moved, you were going to get an open look. So that's the extreme example that I can think of. But back to the question: is can the Raptors do that?
Sure. I mean, even just basic driving kicks where it's a pick and roll and a driving kick, and if it's not there, you throw it back out and you just keep kind of that's kind of the Spurs. Like you just kind of just keep resetting driving kicks off of pick and rolls. And look, these are all these guys on the team have gotten to the NBA learning how to play a lot of different offenses and capable of learning them. And it's more a combination of what a team feels like fits their strengths, what a coaching staff is willing to do, and what a coaching staff is willing to sort of what kind of cachet they have to force some of the more high-profile players to be willing to play. And I think that anyone who was on the Raptors team, from a player's perspective, who felt like they could kind of impose their will as far as style of play goes last year, and I'm not saying that was the case, but if it was the case, I think that they realized last year that that's not what they're able to do. So I think that the way that they were dismantled in the playoffs last year probably leads everyone on both sides of the coaching staff and the players to realize that they need to implement something else. And I think that we'll probably see, hopefully, something different.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they have to, right? Like with the acquisitions they've made, Cory Joseph coming from the Spurs system, DeMar Carroll from the Atlanta system. These guys they almost demand that you play a motion offense. So something like the 4 out, 1 in, where you have 4 wings and Jonas, say, like that could be a very viable option for the Raptors, depending on how mobile Jonas can be. But he can definitely be a part of that offense where, like, if you have 4 wings, he can be at the high post. You can throw him in the block, and you can kind of move around him. What's required, I guess, in today's NBA is that you have good 3-point shooting, and you have guys who are triple threats, like who can pass, who can shoot, and who can drive, or at least who are threats to do all three. Guys like DeMar Carroll, kind of, I wouldn't say they're great driving threats, as they're great shooting threats, and they're somewhat of decent passing threats, but we don't have enough triple threats on this team to kind of run that offense like really, really well. But at the same time, I think we have enough good players, enough good wing players that we should almost have to be playing motion offense in a way where Jonas is the main big guy and you have 4 wings with him, and then it's all about how you move around that 5 in the middle of the court. But that's where Dwayne Casey comes in, right? I mean, It's one thing to get the players, it's another to like orchestrate them in a certain way where you maximize the value. So I'd say yes, it's possible, but whether they can do it, it's yet to be seen in my view.
Yeah.
I don't think KC's proven that yet, at least.
No, I mean, I think that's what we learned from last year. I mean, you don't want to throw everything out from. It's not like you want to build an offense from the ground up because they found a lot of things last year that did work. The biggest problem was a lack of dynamic options and a lack of diversity in the offense. In that, if a team actually had the opportunity to scout the Raptors, which is why the offense got so bad down the stretch and especially in the playoffs, where if you could scout them, if you could see the limited number of things they were willing to do and take that away, then they really had very few reliable second options they could go to in any given set. They really had a problem eating up the whole clock without getting a good look, and but there were positives in that offense to take from it. So it's less building from the ground up and more just adding more of a flow, more of just a dynamic, ball movement option to the offense around those plays.
And unless you have like star players on the team, you're almost required to run a more socialistic offense. Like we have guys who have yet to know how to create their own shots, and to cater to them, you have to design an offense which really feeds them. And we have guys like Terrence Ross, even Cory Joseph to a degree, even DeMario Carroll that are not great individual one-on-one players. So you have to design something around them which maximizes their value. So motion offense, hell yes.
And by the way, like the teams that are winning the championships the last few years are teams with super duper star players on them who have also developed motion offenses to involve everyone on the floor. Like it's a smarter way to go.
Yeah, so on motion offense. There you go. Case settled. Up next, we got Paul Dawkins. This is a good question, man. This is my favorite question of them all, actually. Will we see the Raptors play any zone this season? They completely abandoned it last year, despite being putrid on D. Andrew, what do you think of this one? This is I'd say you have to. I mean, I was calling for the zone last year when the defense was so bad, and it didn't make sense to me last year why we didn't play it. I get the idea that you do sacrifice rebounding on it, but we were doing that anyways. So it's not like we were dominating the glass or being really effective there. So I didn't see what you had to lose here. So I'd say the Raptors, especially with DeMario Carroll now, who can kind of be in two places at one time, you're able to play the zone a little bit more. And I don't have a high opinion of Bismack Biyombo, but if he's on the court, he allows you to kind of like be a little more mobile, kind of defend, but also get back and cater to the board. So I'd say you have slightly better personnel so that you could play the zone. Also, Luis Scola, his intelligence is something that might come into play if you're playing zone. But so I think this year we have the personnel to do it. Last year, I still think we should have, but maybe we didn't have the exact personnel we needed.
I mean, like I guess so, but the zone defense conversation in the NBA is so amongst NBA fans is so overblown to me. Where I think there's a place for it, and we can point to examples like the Dallas Miami series when it played a role, that kind of thing. But even in examples like that where we're looking at it, we're talking about teams in the last 15 years that have used the zone to any kind of an effective use, have been using it like single digit percentage of the times at most. Like we're not.
But that's when you need to use it, though.
It's to switch things up. Like you're not talking
Exactly.
about using it as a set defense or as a base defense. Like
I don't think the question says that. I think the question is just that. Like if your defense is struggling, you're giving up 6 straight possessions where you've given up points. Maybe you need to do something a little different. And last year, I'd say the Raptors used the zone maybe like 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little dubious as to whether or not it could be the answer to things, but I will agree with you that they have a personnel set that's probably a little bit better suited to try and play something like that, like play a little bit, have a more dynamic arsenal of defensive sets and looks that they can go to, just with a more veteran, experienced core and guys that are more used to doing things like switching and changing defense bases. But I don't know if I see it making an impact.
Yeah, not even like if the team's struggling on D, just change it up a little bit, force a few jumpers, get that momentum back. It seems to work. A lot of teams do it. Miami did it last year. I mean, the Spurs do it. Golden State did it. I mean, they all do it in spurts here and there.
Sure, I think it ends up coming down to like when you try to go to it. If the other team hits jumpers, then you look like fools, and if the other team misses jumpers, then it looks like that's what sparked the change. But I'm not sure if they are hit or miss jumpers based on you being in zone, or whether or not you're just talking about a couple isolated shots. Like the math just isn't necessarily adding up to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but. Yeah.
I mean, looking at the other way around, I mean, I remember when the Raptors were up against some zone. I remember Detroit playing the zone once on them, and they just didn't know how to react. So if that's the effect that you could have on other teams by playing it, even for a couple of minutes here and there, uh, I think it should be used. I remember like
Sure.
a couple of years before, Casey used that a lot more. I remember him using that to good effect, and it always gave the result you kind of wanted.
It can be effective when you're playing teams that have offenses that are predicated on the way a defense is playing you. And if they're really set in playing in the certain style and running the specific plays that they're used to that result in how the defense is responding, and if you can sort of get them off their game by doing that a little bit, then sure, like it can be to effect. But I just think that it's a fairly specific scenario you're looking for.
Mm. I guess there's a reason it was disallowed in the NBA for all this time. They just didn't like it.
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, like it allows shots. Like as shooting continues to get better from beyond the arc, it does allow shots.
Yeah. And maybe it's a finer point there is that as shooting gets better, the use of zone has decreased just because people are able to make shots now. And before you used to have a power forward which just didn't know how to make a three and used to just zone him out. But now you can't do that anymore, and because he's going to knock down that shot. Even the three, who used to be more of a defensive, athletic dude, now can hit threes. So you can't really zone him out anymore. And maybe that's the reason why teams are playing less and less of it.
Yeah, like especially if you're playing small ball and someone's trying to zone you on that, you either open up shots for good shooters or driving lanes are wide open because no one is really sure where to help from.
Hmm. All right, case settled. So up next, we got a question from at 58 hockey fan 58. Man, I guess his handle was really taken that he had to
Yeah.
go for this one. Yeah.
At 58, hockey fan was already taken, and at hockey fan 58 was already taken. He had to double down.
Yeah. So he asks. First of all, he has got two questions. The first one is, who's our most important bench player? Who's our most important bench player? You want to go on this one first?
Most
I
important.
got to remind myself where bench is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think that they're not necessarily sold on who's going to be starting where. I think that probably the answer to that is like, does Patrick Patterson start at the four?
You got to
Because if
assume
not,
he's going to
Patrick
start.
Patterson
You got to assume he's going to start.
starting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Ross?
James Johnson? Does James Johnson get used? Is it Ross?
Yeah, it's a really good question because
I think the answer to that question is yet to reveal themselves. Like I think that's a good question for that reason, and that there could be several answers to that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's no one that's going to be leading the second unit, I don't think, in the way that it was just carried last year by.
I'd say Cory Joseph. I'll settle on him because he's a big money signing. He is one of the big money signings. He's really been counted on to run the bench offense, and everybody kind of knows the bench is a little threadbare when it comes to talent. Terrence Ross, James Johnson, these guys aren't scorers, and you're kind of relying on Cory Joseph to somewhat orchestrate that bench offense, and it's really up to him to get that unit going. I'd say him.
Either Lou or Grievous has completely and utterly dominated the bench units for the last couple of years as well. So there's that to build it on. Like it makes sense that might be the case.
So Cory Joseph's the answer there. His other question is, he doesn't see a fit, but talk about Carmelo to the Raptors if at all possible. So let me just flip this question around a little bit. Would you do a Carmelo Anthony for DeMar DeRozan deal?
Yeah, I would. Everyone hates on Carmelo Anthony because the talking point for Carmelo Anthony was like Carmelo Anthony is one of the best players in the league. It's like, yeah, well, you can't win a championship with Carmelo and a bunch of bums. He's not one of the three best players in the NBA. Like, okay, cool. I think we have established that you can't win a championship with anyone in a bunch of bums. Though LeBron came damn well close, but people forget just how good Carmelo is. I mean, he didn't play a lot last year because of injury, but the year before he was looking at. I mean, his numbers were incredibly efficient, and he's gotten a lot better at passing than people realize. And yeah, he likes to shoot and he dominates the ball from a certain area, but think to that Knicks team from 2 years ago that won whatever it was, like 54 games. That just like how good that team was, and looking back and realizing that he didn't. I mean, Amari was kind of done after that injury. He didn't have a ton of help, and he had Jason Kidd as probably the third best player on that team. And like, Carmelo can dominate the ball. He can score for you from anywhere. And if you can actually build a functional team around him, that's a guy who can rebound. He can play defense, and he can score at an efficient rate out of ISO or however you want him to with anyone, and build a team around him with good guys. And I think people are sleeping on Carmelo. I think it's a mistake.
So would you make that deal?
Sure,
Yeah.
especially given the fact that
he's 31, so you're gonna get 2 years out of him, maybe.
Sure, but DeMar's an unrestricted free agent in a year.
Yeah. Remember last week we talked about Allen Iverson not having somebody to play with? Like somebody on Twitter said, well, he played with Carmelo Anthony that 1 year, and I was like, well, that doesn't really count.
No,
like he was done.
That was not Allen Iverson we were talking about.
Yeah, and same question to Carmelo Anthony. Like, has he played with a legit secondary like guy you could possibly win a title with? You mentioned Mario Stoudemire in that, in your comment there, but like, has he had real support ever in his career?
They made the Western Conference Finals, and they were really good the year that it was Carmelo. They had Kenyon Martin. They had a not quite over the hill but past his prime Chauncey Billups that was still reliable but not great, and they had Allen Iverson. I think that was that team.
Yeah,
I could be getting some of those pieces wrong, but I think that's what that team was when the Nuggets made it to the conference finals, and that team was very good.
Yeah. So the one knock on him is that he's a bit of a black hole on offense, and I'd say you could apply the same criticism to DeMar DeRozan as well.
Sure, I think and the difference is that in the last 2 years, look at Carmelo Anthony's shooting percentages, like his field goal percentage, his 3-point percentage, and even like he is capable of finding guys out of that sort of extended baseline block that he likes to play on, and like his numbers are efficient. He's hogging the ball, but he is not hurting his team when he touches the ball. He's being helpful.
Mm-hmm. Like he's not taking shots away from more efficient options or yeah, basically that. He's not killing his team.
No, he's a guy who is capable of passing out of the double team, and if you're going to single team him, he's going to hit a shot at an efficient rate. Like we are forgetting how good Carmelo Anthony is.
You think if DeMar DeRozan gets dangled in front of Phil Jackson, he might, look twice?
I don't know. I'm not sure what Phil Jackson thinks about someone like that. It's as far as team building goes, I think we're all trying to get a handle on Phil Jackson, and each summer I don't think Phil Jackson had a particularly bad summer. I think the trades he made a year ago were particularly bad, and I'm not sure who he's valuing. I have no idea. Call him and ask,
Yeah.
If I think the owner is really wary whenever Masai calls, but
yeah. All right, so that's that. So I'd say I think I would do that deal only if it's for a year or two, because in the East the path to the NBA Finals really goes through Cleveland, and if you got to beat a team like Cleveland to get to the NBA Finals, you need a player like Carmelo Anthony to kind of match up with somebody like LeBron. So if you're really serious about contending in the next year to 2 years, and this deal is offered to you, I don't see how you pass it up. But at the same time, you go like, well, you're sacrificing the future for it here. But that's the part that I'm not convinced that we really, really are.
No, and here's the reason why you do that deal. Take the Bill Simmons trade value column rule from that. It's like, look, if Phil Jackson calls up Toronto and says Carmelo for DeMar, you're making the trade almost definitely right away. You might think about it, but you're probably making it right away. Whereas if that's flipped around, Phil Jackson is going to have to think long and hard about that, and Knicks fans are probably going to try to burn down Madison Square Garden the next day.
Okay, so that's that one. The next one comes from Matt Durds, DURDS, at Matt Durds, and he asks, the future of Terrence Ross. Oh God, not this again. Extend him, trade him as part of the Markieff Morris deal, or let him go to RFA?
Are we making the Markieff Morris deal?
I don't know. In his mind, it's already done. I'd say don't do anything with Terrence Ross. I don't think you have to make any moves, and let's see what the market offers for him, and then decide to pay him if you want to pay him at that time. Certainly don't make any moves at this point.
I mean, look, if I think you lowball him, and if he's willing to go for a small contract, then there's no harm in having a guy for a
What's
number.
Small? What's small?
I guess he's got to get a raise over his current contract, so maybe you don't extend. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe you're right. You're not going to give him. You're probably not giving him $5 or $6 million a year.
His qualifying offer is at $4.8 million.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you have to go at least 5 or 6. Yeah, maybe
5 or 6 means he's into Cory Joseph territory.
Yeah, I guess you see how the year goes, and you either give him a qualifying offer or you match. But the idea is like you're gambling on whether or not he has an outstanding year this year. And I think if he has an outstanding year this year and you haven't agreed to pay him, you're fine with that.
Yeah.
Like you let the market decide.
I think that right now the only guarantee you have in Terrence Ross is that he is definitely good enough to be the 8th guy on the team. So if you're gonna give him a contract offer, it's got to be what the 8th best player on your team should have, and I don't think he's gonna accept that. I don't think the Raptors would even try that because they know he wouldn't accept that.
I'm in such a weird place in trying to figure out where Terrence Ross is headed because I wouldn't call myself on the Terrence Ross bandwagon, but I'm the last person who's not willing to sell every piece of Terrence Ross stock that they have. But at the same time, is he all that much better than Darrell Wright, who can't get a contract to play in the league right now? Like, is the difference between those two guys like 4 years in age? Really? Is that just it?
What keeps Allen Anderson in the league? Here's your Allen Anderson mention on the podcast. Happened after a while. But what's keeping Allen Anderson employed in the NBA? What do you think it is?
His willingness to aggressively make his own shot at certain times, and his size, and the fact that Allen Anderson is probably making like $3 million a year, $2.5 million. Like he's not making a ton of money.
It's also his defense. I think he's got a reputation as a decent defender at his position, and that's what kind of keeps him employed. Like he's not going to be a negative on defense, and he might give you some shot making. I think that's Terrence Ross's career right there. He can't be a negative on defense, and he's got to give you some shot making. Right now, he's not giving you either, with the exception of some threes he drains once in a while, which puts his percentages a little up. So he's got to up the defensive side of his game for him to have forget about the Raptors, like post Raptors contract career. He's got to up his defense so he gets money like Allen Anderson to keep him in the league.
And look, make no mistake, if Terrence Ross can become a league average or slightly better defender and continue to hit threes at a 38 to 41% rate, he'll get paid at least $6 million a year from somebody. But that's all he needs to do. But there's a but.
Yeah. So that's the Terrence Ross talk. I think we've talked enough about him. And then there's a question from at Alka Trems. I'm not going to bother with this one. He goes, why haven't the Raps tried to get Markieff Morris or Kenneth Faried yet, or any other power forward? So the answer there is that we don't really have the assets to acquire somebody like Markieff Morris, and I don't think we would want to, because Markieff Morris is essentially not the type of player I would think Dwayne Casey wants at this point, because he's not really a great three-point shooter. He can't stretch the floor, and the Raptors kind of into that. And Faried, Andrew, you've talked about Faried many, many times on this podcast, so have at it, man. You got like 30 seconds to kill this one.
Yeah, look, Faried is really exciting, but he's also incredibly limited. He's not, the fact that he can rebound really well for his size does not mean he can also play defense, especially interior defense, very well for his size. He's a tweener. Like, he can't shoot from outside. He's developed no ability to do that. He has something of a post game, which is neat, but we're moving more and more away from a post game, and you're also having a team who's already struggling to get enough post looks for the guy who led the league in offensive efficiency from the post last year. So he's making a shitload of money. It doesn't really make sense to bring Faried in. Faried is a name that people know, and that's why they like to talk about him, because they like trades and they like names. But Faried is overpaid and overvalued, and hard to fit into a team.
And he can't, with consistency, make jumpers.
No, that's right. He has no range.
He has no range. And you talked about having a motion offense earlier. To accommodate something like that, you need at least somebody who's able to step out just a little bit, just so your spacing is okay, so he can play the big man in a 4-wing setup. So if you don't have that, you're kind of killing yourself. And I think the Faried's type of player, this brute of a defensive player, or who tries to play defense, or this big guy who can't really do much on offense, it's kind of out of fashion at this point. So I think you're going to find it's going to be tough finding takers for Faried if he's on the block.
Yeah, they're going to have a really hard time trading Faried because of, the money got a little bit better with the salary cap going up, but he's a niche specialty player. Like, he's not a put in any offense and have him succeed, put in any defense and have him succeed. He's an energy guy, and that's great, and I love his attitude, and I really like watching the style of play that he plays, but I don't know how you can be a championship team that pays him that contract.
Yeah, agreed on that one.
By the way, Damari Carroll is a better version of Markieff Morris too.
Yeah, so there's that too. The Marquis Morris thing, I don't also want a player who makes such a huge deal, who's such a pain from a personality perspective for his current team. So what if your brother got traded, man? Suck it up and
Yeah,
play for the Suns.
yeah. Had a crap load of technical fouls last year. Is facing a felony assault charge. It's not is punking his team and publicly demanding a trade. Not an ideal guy.
Like right now, his just the way he's acting, his trade value is like up to Ty Lawson levels at this point, or down to Ty Lawson levels at this point.
And the way he's acting means that he's either unwilling. Like I guarantee you that his agents are strongly advising him not to make the comments that he's making because it's tanking his own trade value, which is making it harder to trade him, and especially harder to have a role in the conversation of where to trade him. So he's not listening to the people who have his interests at hand. I would assume,
Hmm.
which means he's not listening to anybody. So
All right, moving on from that, we got at BMD in T dot. I wonder what the BMD means. He
got another
goes,
dude.
is the rebrand a massive failure? That's a pretty bold question. I don't know. I don't know if it's a
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a success, failure, or a massive success or a massive failure. No, how do you measure that?
I don't. That's it's not. I don't know. There's no way to figure that out. Like I mean, like if we're actually taking this silly question seriously, I think that we would say like, what do merchandise sales look like? What do season ticket sales look like before and after? What is the rate of an increase in Google searches for this and that? And obviously, we don't have access to that information, and I don't think we're particularly interested in either way. But
Yeah. Well,
like sports is sports talk radio. Let's jump to massive
yeah.
conclusions about things in which we know very little.
Well, at BMD and T dot, here's what I can tell you is that when I looked at the new logo, it didn't really prompt me or push me to buy any sort of merchandise. So in terms of winning me over as somebody who wants to buy merchandise, it didn't really do it for me. So from my perspective, it didn't do anything. So if that helps you answer your question, man, there you go. He's got a follow-up question, which is completely unrelated. And he goes,
Okay.
does Cory Joseph suck and is he better than DeLon Wright? It's like in the same tweet. He has these two questions.
Exclusively in platitudes. Is it a failure? Does it suck? No, they're the best. The greatest marketing campaign of all time, and
Mhm.
I think that despite Delon Wright being the second greatest point guard of his generation, Cory Joseph is going to be Magic Johnson.
Mhm.
Do you know the answer to that question?
Does Cory Joseph? No, he doesn't suck. Of course, he doesn't suck. He's an NBA player who played for the Spurs last year and played really well, so he doesn't suck at all. Is he better than DeLon Wright? Yeah, probably. I mean, he's got years of experience, while DeLon Wright is a rookie
Yeah,
who will probably get schooled by him in practice. So no, he doesn't suck, and yes, he's better than DeLon Wright at least for next season.
yeah. I think the answer is maybe, and we hope so. I think like where that's coming from is probably based on like look, we're paying him $40 million, so is it 40 or 35? Like what is that contract?
It's like 7 million next season, so whatever.
Yeah, like so I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that he is better than a rookie point guard making that much money. And having said that, there's a lot of people who are a little surprised and a little concerned about the amount of money that we gave to Cory Joseph. So the idea is like, does he suck? I think there's a great deal of concern and interest in finding out whether he's worth the amount that we paid him. I think that's a fair question, and I don't think we know the answer to it. But that is going to be something that people are watching closely because I think that contract surprised a lot of people.
I'm gonna learn lesson from history here and not say too much about this contract because I made a lot of noise when Amir Johnson was handed his deal. And at the time, I was like, it's a lot of money, blah, blah. At this point, maybe this is just Amir Johnson 2.0, the same kind of contract, overpayment. At first glance, it looks like he got paid too much money, but once the contract pans out, you're like, oh my God, it's a great deal. So maybe 3 years down the road, we look at this and go, damn, should have been longer.
Sure. I mean, I think that you're better off as a general manager if you're paying someone for who you think they're going to be, not who they've been so far. I think that's all of the albatross contracts we usually see is when someone gets overpaid for who they've been thus far, not who people think they're going to be, especially for aging veterans. But there's obviously a lot of risk inherent in that. DeMar and Amir were both looked like they were overpaid when they were extended, and they both have turned those into very good contracts.
Mm.
So you take a risk, and they took a risk offering Cory Johnson the money he did, or Cory Joseph, sorry. But we won't know whether or not that's a good contract for at least a year, if not two.
So let's take a quick short break and come back with a short segment to wrap it up. All right, welcome to part 2 of the podcast. For this segment, Andrea and I were talking offline. We're like, have the Raptors actually improved this season from a playoff perspective? So is the current team, what little we know of them, are they in a better position to win a playoff round than the team last year? And so we thought we'd look at some possible playoff opponents in the first or second round and see, based on what little we know, whether this Raptor team would actually be, could they compete against it? But before we get to that, Andrew, briefly, is today's Raptor team better than last year's?
I hope so.
That's not an authoritative answer. Come on, man, pick one.
No, but that honestly, I'm not better than this time last year. I think the answer is probably yes, because I think that we were all pleasantly surprised at how good the Raptors team was over the 35 games that opened the season a year ago. So I think yes, I think they're better. I think they're better. If I'm going to use semantics to answer, I think they are better today than I thought they were last September. I don't think that they are better today than they were during the point of last year where we talked ourselves into the highest point of optimism for this team.
December 14th.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think they're better than we thought they were at the point in which we were overreacting to them most last year.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to go with I'd say from a personnel perspective, they're better. They're more balanced. They have more defense on the team, which I will equate to being better. They may not win as many games as last year's teams, but I think they might be better suited for playoff success just because they play better defense, or they have the personnel to play better defense, and they're less reliant on individual brilliance or individual performances than last year's team. So let's start with the Cavaliers, obviously, and if the Raptors were facing the Cavaliers in a playoff series, Andrew, who would you pick?
Braun.
All right.
I think we can dismiss this one pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right. Would it be a sweep?
I think it would be a sweep.
Oh wow. Damn, man, that's the gulf right now. You think?
Look at what LeBron without support just did to the Eastern Conference last year in the playoffs. It's
fair enough. Say no more. Let's move on. This one's obvious. The Bulls. Gasol's a year older. Derrick Rose didn't have a great season last year. Maybe he comes back stronger. Maybe he doesn't. Joakim Noah is still a decent defensive player, but really he's not a great offensive player. And I'd say he's been somewhat disappointing over the last couple of years overall.
Sorry, who is disappointing?
Joakim Noah.
Oh, sorry. For some reason, I thought you were talking about Jimmy Butler, and I thought you were way
No. Jimmy Butler, he's in his own class.
Joakim Noah has been playing like a guy who just looks like he's completely broken down. I think that I'm less optimistic on this Bulls team than I was a year ago. I think I agree with you. I don't think we're ever going to see the Derrick Rose that we saw before. I think that Noah is just kind of beaten down, and while I still think he's capable of being very good, I think we need to see him have an extended period of time off to ever get back to where he was, if he can get there. Pau is another year older, and we've got the Spanish coach talking about how he blew over the minutes limit that the medical staff thought he should play. It's a brand new coaching system that they're going in. They've been worn down for Tibbs, and they've got a new system to learn, and Tibbs isn't there to keep them on their grind. I think that this team wins a lot less regular season games than they have in the last few years. Having said that, they beat the Raptors.
And, they got, if you look at organic improvements, like Nikola Mirotic is going to be better. Tony Snell is going to be a little better, but I don't know if that makes up for, some of their core guys getting a little older and broken down. So I'd say in a playoff series, I'd give the Bulls still a slight edge just based on experience, but I'd say the Raptors would have a shot in this series. I'd still say Bulls in 7, but I'd say the Raptors are close.
Yeah, let's remember, a year ago, a lot of pundits were picking the Bulls to come out as the Eastern Conference champions, and I don't think that we're going to see that happen very much this year, but I think that they still have a lot of depth and a lot of abilities to, if we're assuming health especially, I have a hard time seeing the Raptors taking them to 7 games or winning.
Let's move on to Washington. Paul Pierce is out, and he's been replaced by Alan Anderson. By the way, he makes $4 million this season. So
okay, good for him.
And they picked up Will Bynum late last season. Otto Porter Jr. became a Hall of Famer during the playoffs. Martell Webster is probably back from injury.
There's another Washington pickup that we're missing, though, isn't there?
Who did they pick? Gary Neal? They got Gary Neal, did they?
Not Gary Neal, but there's someone else.
DeJuan Blair, Will Bynum, Jared Dudley.
Yeah. I like Jared Dudley, man.
Yeah. So what do you think?
We all watched that series last year, right?
Yeah, like it would be stupid for us to pick the Raptors on this one, isn't it? Or was it just all Paul Pierce that caused us to lose?
Are we saying Paul Pierce minus Paul Pierce plus DeMar Carroll equals Raptors win? I don't like our boys here.
Paul Pierce was a problem, but he wasn't the problem.
No, like he was only playing like 28 minutes a game. 26 minutes a game. We got beat badly by this team. It wasn't close.
No, we can't pick the Raptors here, man.
I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna. No, I'd pick the Wizards in this one. I'd say maybe not a sweep, but I'd still pick the Wizards.
Hopefully not a sweep. If we get swept by the Wizards again, I'm moving.
Best backcourt in the East, Washington Wizards.
Yeah. And again, for all of these, we're assuming health. I think we have to, right?
Yeah, sure. Well, for Derrick Rose, we weren't, but yeah, going forward. Yeah. Milwaukee Bucks. This is the team that what was it last year that Will wanted to face the?
Yeah. You know what? This is where you and I come back to the fact that we wanted to play the Bucks and we felt confidence against the Bucks. And Will was driving that we can take Washington, but fear the deer.
Yeah.
Fear the deer. I think we can beat. I am confident that we can beat Milwaukee. I'm a little dubious of their experiment going towards Greg Monroe. I'm not sure how they're going to tie those different offensive systems together. I think Jabari Parker is still essentially a rookie. I think the Greek Freak continues to get better, but I don't think he ever becomes a superstar. I'm going to sound really dumb when Milwaukee ends up just marching over us later in the year, maybe, but I'm not.
With Gravis Vasquez leading the charge off the bench.
I think that we're all getting a little too excited with how good Milwaukee's going to be. Maybe not we're all doing that, but I've read some incredibly optimistic opinions on Milwaukee, and I think that people are talking about what they'd like to see, not what they think they're going to see.
All right, so moving on. The Boston Celtics.
You taking?
No, I'm picking the Raptors, man. Oh, for sure. I mean, if we're saying we're going to lose to the Bucks in the playoff, there's no point in following the Raptors this season.
Let's go home. No matter how good they are, like Milwaukee is that team that you just had. Like, no, we can beat the Bucks.
I'm not going to sit here and do a podcast and say we're going to lose to the Bucks. All right, let's move on. Boston Celtics. Plucky team. They've always been plucky under Brad Stevens. This summer pickups were Amir Johnson, obviously. They got David Lee.
All of the power forwards.
Yeah, so a bunch of Isaiah Thomas is now there full time, I guess, for the full season. I don't know. Isaiah Thomas is 5'9". Oh my God, is that what he is?
Is he what?
He's 5'9".
Yeah, he's not tall, man.
Whew, I didn't know he was 5'9" though.
He is not tall.
I thought he was like a TJ Fordish 6'1", but I didn't know he was 5'9". Yeah.
Boston Boston. I'm not even sure that they have a shooting guard and a center on the roster. Like they've got like 6 power forwards, 3 small forwards, and 3 point guards. Like
Well, Kelly Olynyk's their center, right?
Sure, but I stand by what I said. Like
Tyler Zeller is 7 foot tall. Come on, so is Kelly Olynyk. Yeah.
I think he needs to play interior defense for you.
Well, neither. As you saw in Lithuania versus Argentina versus Canada with Scola let him up.
Yeah, look, the team is going to be really well coached. I think they're going to play hard. I think they're going plucky. I think they continue to be that plucky 7 or 8 seed. Like that's.
So the Raptors, the Raptors would take them.
Is here.
Yeah, I'd say the Raptors would take them. Yeah, I'd say in 5 games.
I hope so.
All right, we'll do a couple more. Brooklyn Nets, rivals, I guess, from the Atlantic. already beaten us twice.
I don't think Brooklyn's anybody's rival right now. Brooklyn is just imploding.
Yeah, forget them. Indiana, Paul George is back, healthy.
Playing the floor.
Mm.
Against his will.
What do you think?
Roy Hibbert's gone. David West is gone.
Jordan Hill's in.
Yeah, like that's. I'm not sure what that team is going to look like. Like, well, they're going to have to really change the way they play entirely. And they were so limited offensively, and I don't think that was Roy Hibbert's fault. So, I mean, I'm not a Paul George debtor. I think Paul George is very, very good, but I don't know what this team's identity is going to be because they were such a defensive force, and Roy Hibbert played such a key role in that. And if they're moving away from that, I don't know how they're going to be dominant defensively, and I don't know how they're going to be better than average offensively.
Well, they got Monta Ellis, so that was their big move in the summer. So they have, I'd say, I don't want to use the word elite, but they got like a top scoring guard in this.
I've really skimmed over Monta there. Like that's going to help them score very well.
But in a playoff series against the Raptors, I'd still pick the Raptors. It's 6 games, I'd say.
Yeah. You can scout. You can take Monta out of a series.
Yeah. We'll do 2 more. We'll do Miami. By the way, I remember doing our Eastern Conference preview, which we'll do in a couple of weeks again, last year, and we kind of nailed Miami. We actually nailed everybody last summer. We were bang on pretty much how the standings finished.
But I didn't want to bring that up, but I was hoping someone would bring it up because I feel good about it.
Yeah. So we kind of know what we're talking about when it comes to the East. Maybe that's going a little too far, but.
We kind of got lucky.
Yeah, we kind of got lucky. So Miami, Gerald Green, Dragic is now full time there. I got Chris Bosh. I'm guessing he's going to be back next season. Dwayne Wade's a year older at 33. Hassan Whiteside, we'll see him for a full season again. So I think last year we picked them at like 6th or 7th. Yeah, Justice Winslow.
Sorry.
And I think this year I'll pick them again as a 6th or 7th seed.
I think they might do better than that. I think that Miami is a team that is going to take a lot of the regular season to figure themselves out. I mean, Bosh and Dragic played. Did they even play together at all? Was it one game? No games they played together last year.
Yeah.
They've got, like you said, they've got key guys coming in, whether that be someone like Green or Winslow. The whole deal with Hassan Whiteside wasn't something that they came out of training camp ready to implement and be a major part of their team. So I think that it's going to take these guys a long time to figure out what their identity is and how they're going to play together and to find chemistry on the court. But they're really well coached, and it's a really good mix of veteran leadership and young talent. And if they can put it together and be healthy by the time playoffs come around, I don't think they're a top 4 seed, but I would be terrified of playing them in a best of 7 series if they're healthy. I think if we're assuming health and if they have the whole regular season to learn how to play together, I think they can beat the Raptors.
Really, you'd pick them ahead of the Raptors, eh?
If it's a healthy Dwayne Wade, if Goran Dragic is there, if Dragic and Bosh and Wade are really, really good at basketball, and they've got a lot of really athletic 3-and-D type guys to try and fill holes around them. And if Hassan Whiteside is what they thought, what he looked like he could be at times, that is an absolute force inside. And they're like, no one has a higher ceiling, lower basement than Miami. Like, Miami could miss the playoffs. Miami could make the Eastern Conference Finals. Neither one of those 2 things would surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, here's my thing on Miami. Like, if I had to put money on it, I'd say the Raptors would have the better regular season record than them. They'll definitely have more wins. But in a playoff series, kind of like the old Nets series, remember? Like, yeah, you finished higher than the Nets, but in the playoffs, they might kill you. And I got the same feeling here. So, I'd say Miami in 7, unfortunately. So if you just quickly recap what we just discussed, Andrew, we basically said...
We didn't talk about Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta. Yeah, I kind of skipped them. Yeah, Atlanta. So they lost DeMario Carroll, and they got Millsap, or they retained Millsap. What else did they do?
I'm worried about Atlanta.
Tim Hardaway Jr.
The last couple of years, and I'm concerned. I think they lost. I think what we're basically seeing is the team that ran out of steam in the playoffs and ran out of bench players. I think we're going to see that group of guys again, but without DeMario Carroll, who kind of was it like DeMario Carroll was their leading scorer in the conference finals last year, wasn't he?
He was, but you know what I think? I think that they're all about the system. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kent Bazemore suddenly becomes the new DeMario Carroll and gets himself a huge deal in a couple of years.
I'm going to disagree with you there. I think that the reason why Atlanta really ran out of steam and why they went from being one of the best teams in the NBA to barely being able to inch their way past a Washington team that was playing for a while without John Wall and then with a badly injured John Wall is because the system is great and the system allows you to do things, but you still need guys to play major roles in that system. And I think that a lot of the guys that they've found have moved on or been arrested or gotten hurt, and that could be a problem.
Yeah. I'd say the playoff series, sure. I think, again, this is the opposite applies here. Regular season, I think they might still have a good record, but in a playoff, the Raptors might take them. And the Raptors beat them like 2 or 3 times last season, so there's some precedent there. I do think Dennis Schroeder is going to have a breakout season. I liked him when he was coming out of the draft, and last year I think he showed that why it's not unreasonable to think that he'll surpass Jeff Teague in a year or so.
Ooh, I thought Jeff Teague really showed how good he was last year too, though. Like I'm not. No, like regardless, they're going to be fine at point guard. Like those two guys are both very good and continually improving.
Mm.
Kyle Korver can still shoot better than almost any human being who's ever existed.
Yeah. So and what? You're going to take the Raptors or what?
Pardon me?
You're going to take the Raptors in a playoff series?
I think I'm jumping off the Atlanta bandwagon. I think that I'd take Toronto over the Hawks in a series.
So the only teams the Raptors can beat, according to this brief conversation, are the Hawks, the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Nets. So none of Cleveland, Chicago, Washington, which are probably our 3 most likeliest candidates to see in the second round. But hey, man, let's win a round first.
Yeah, I don't expect them to beat Cleveland, Chicago, Washington, or Miami. Like I think, but by the way, do you think they're better? If we're talking about reaching their ceiling, do you see them as better than 5th? I mean, I think we just demonstrated this, but I don't think that's a surprise. I don't think beforehand we saw them as better than the 5th.
You know, I'm so I don't give a shit about home court advantage anymore.
Yeah.
I would rather not have home court so I can kind of start playing pressure-free basketball and kind of look to steal a game on the road than have all this pressure of having to win your first 2 games of the playoffs. I think it really helps them to be on the road. It's kind of like that. Like the times we beat the Knicks or the times you almost beat the Sixers, we were the underdogs. Like it was, we won game 1 in Philly, and that's why it went to 7 games. No, we won game 5 in New York because we started in New York and stole a game. It's things like those that I think this Raptor team, much like its predecessor from years past, need to be. They need to be the underdogs. I don't think they handle the favorite position really well because they've never been really successful as favorites, so they don't know how to handle that. But if they're underdogs, I think you have a greater chance. You steal a game on the road, one of the first 2 games, you get this momentum automatically. You get this boost, right? But you lose one of the first 2 home games, and you're in the hole.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially that's the case with a team that hasn't learned how to win before. I think that what we're getting at there is you hear a lot of veterans talk about how they're not as concerned about losing game 1 because they understand it's a grind. It's a 7-game series. You can compartmentalize that. You realize that game is done with. You move on to the next. Whereas you carry that more, you overthink it more when you haven't been there and you haven't been through it, especially. And this group of guys hasn't. I mean, aside from DeMario Carroll coming in, this group of guys and Cory Joseph having obviously been on a championship team, they haven't won a series. They haven't made it through deep into the playoffs. And I think that perhaps the idea of being the underdog, taking off some of that pressure, could certainly be helpful to them. I think that it's worth remembering that this is a team that if they learn to hit their ceiling and they take their games to another level, especially defensively, and open things up offensively, and and injuries play a role for other teams as they always do during the playoffs, then certainly there could be a run through the playoffs available for this team. We're not saying that that's not a possibility, but realistically, like they've got a lot of ground to make up.
I think, Andrew, we got to leave it at that, man. It's been over an hour of recording time, and it is the off season, so we got to save our breath for when the real game starts. So thanks for coming on, listener. We took as many questions as we could, but keep them coming. We'll have another segment next podcast where we can answer some more questions. And before we go, just a quick reminder: somebody told me on Twitter that if you go to iTunes or whatever you use, Stitcher on Android or whatever, if you have a chance, go and try to rate the podcast. Apparently, we don't have enough ratings on there, Andrew. I don't know what that really means, but
go on and rate it well.
And on that note, also, I would like to apologize to the listeners who send in questions that I then take a turn to say are dumb. That's bad form on my part. Thank you for sending in questions.
Yeah. So yeah, go to iTunes. I don't know how you get there. I'm assuming you download an app or something. Go there and rate us. Hopefully you rate us positively. And I think that's something we would really appreciate. So if you're on Android or iTunes or Windows Phone, we still doing that thing? Or a BlackBerry? Just go and find us and try to rate us. See you guys.